Now that the Demko AD20 is on the market for a couple of years and my honeymoon phase is for sure over, it's good to take a step back and see how good these knives actually are. So if you look at folding knives or any knife for that matter, it's good to see it as not just a standalone tool, how good is it on its own, but also how good is it in its category. So if you take the AD20 full thickness, for instance, you have to compare it not just to every knife, but only to knives in this size and thickness category, right? So you have to compare it to like a Microtech SOCOM or a Microtech MSI or any Microtech for that matter, I guess, because these are all very thick on the spine and kind of in the same class. So the Demko AD20 would be considered a heavy knife, a thick knife and a bruiser, but is it really that heavy compared to knives in its class? That's always the question. And I think compared to other knives, it is very, very good. It's not the lightest knife in this class for sure. And funnily enough, a lot of these full thickness folding knives that are on the market are from Andrew Demko himself. So he designed a lot of knives in this category. And I think in this category as a whole, this might be one of the best knives in existence because it just has the best, most reliable locking system, also the simplest locking system, and it also has a couple of features that make it super, super good. Now let's talk about the locking system. It's unique because not only does it avoid most of the issues that, for instance, a crossbar style lock with the Omega springs has, because a coil spring is just more long lasting, it is also an enclosed locking system. And if you take a look at other knives that use a coil spring instead of Omega springs, these are usually open, so dust and debris can get in the locking system a lot easier. So this, with being an enclosed system and with saving a lot of weight by not having liners, only having liners where the locking system is, it's a very forward-thinking locking system. And I can speak from experience, I have used this knife way too hard than you ever should use a folding knife for video purposes, I guess, and because I was interested. And this is the slowest wearing locking system that I have ever tried. This knife has zero blade play up and down, side to side, so it held up to all the abuse that I have done with it. So yeah, this knife is the absolute strongest knife in this class because of this locking system. And I think compared to like Microtech knives, for instance, this 20CV that is on here has a way better heat treatment and cuts a lot better. And with a knife that has a thick geometry, this is really important, that it is very, very sharp, because it does not cut by its geometry, but it cuts by the sharpness of the steel. So a good geometry, good heat treatment is very, very important for a thick knife like this. And this is also why I think the AD20 is better than any Hinderer knife with the same thickness, and any Microtech knife, and any knife for that matter in this category. So the AD20 to me is the best high-end thick blade in the folding knife category. Could be argued that there are better knives for the price for sure, but in terms of the high quality knives, high performance knives, this is probably, not just probably, but in my opinion, this is the best knife in this category. So the AD20 is an absolute winner for what it is. Now let's move on to the AD20 Slim. The AD20 Slim has a lot tougher of a competition, I would say, because there are quite a few knives on the market that have the same cutting edge length, but do cut overall a lot better. So Spyderco makes a ton of knives that have the same cutting edge length, but are a lot slimmer, thinner, and lighter weight at the same time. And obviously cut a lot better, but the AD20 Slim is made for a little bit of robustness still, at least in this version. There are full flat ground versions as well. Even though I think the full flat ground versions still probably don't cut as well than most Spydercos, but yeah. So I guess like a more comparable knife would be the Umnumzaan from Chris Reeve, because this is also meant to be a little bit tougher on the spine. And the Umnumzaan is also a better knife in my opinion. I'm not sure of the price difference between the American-made 8020 Slims and the Omnium Sounds currently, because the prices have been risen so dramatically in the last couple of years. Here's a Sebenza, also a similar cutting edge and robustness on the spine. So yeah, I guess it really comes down to what you like. The Chris Reeve knives obviously are a lot more classy with the frame lock and with the feel, fit and finish and everything. And this feels a lot more hard used because of this unique locking system and the G10 construction. So this is more of a go-to-work knife, kind of a knife that you're not afraid of getting it dirty. I guess the MSI would also be a good competitor here as well. But yeah, I guess the 8020 Slim to me also just has a lot more competition in this class. And if it comes down to it, I would rather carry a Recon one, which is also a lot cheaper, and I'm not afraid of breaking it or making it dirty. Not that I'm afraid of making my knives dirty. I mean, I baton wood with my 8020, so I don't really care that much, obviously, but I do like my Recon a lot more. It's a lot more carryable. I feel like it feels better and in the pocket, and I'm really trusting the Triad lock enough. So yeah, the 8020 Slim to me is not my favorite version of the 8020 for that reason. There's just competition on the market that I just like better. Here's a Spyderco Manix, also quite comparable, a lot more carryable and a lot slicier also. So yeah, if I go for robustness, I take the full thickness 8020, and if I go for cutting performance, I take a Recon or any Spyderco for that matter. So yeah, to me the 8020 Slim has a tough spot on the market, and I also don't like that it does not have, or at least mine does not have a thumb stud. I really would only buy a Demko knife with a thumb stud, if I'm honest. Now let's talk about the 8020.5 and Shark Cup, I guess, which is just I guess a newer version of the 8020.5. The Shark Cup also has quite a tough spot on the market because there are a ton of different Spydercos in the size range with the same cutting edge. All of these cut a lot better. Not saying that the 8020.5 cuts bad. I think it's still, for how thick it is behind the edge, it's actually a good cutter, and the heat treatment is really good on all the Demko knives. That's something that should be pointed out. But there is just a lot of competition on the market in even high-end knives in the same size category. The 8020.5 is not necessarily a high-end knife in terms of its price. It usually is more in the mid-range kind of pricing. But yeah, it is still very expensive for what it is. One thing that I for sure don't like about it is that it feels very expensive compared to what you can get in this price range. So for instance, a Spyderco Sage or a Para Free would be more affordable and cutting a lot better because they have like a thinner blade stock. So here's my Benchmade 940. If I go out and I need a knife that is a little bit more robust on the spine, but it needs to be small, I still pick the 940, even though it has S30V and this one has 3V. The 3V I really like, I really enjoy. This is a really nice steel, and like I said, the heat treatment on all the Demko knives is pretty perfect. They have about the best 20CV that I personally have tried in a number of years. The M4 is really good, the 3V is really good, performs way better than you would think they would perform. So the heat treatment, the quality, really, really good. The thing that I don't like about the 8020.5 as much is that they have a lot softer spring tension than the larger ones. So the larger ones, they feel a lot more solid and the spring tension is higher. These have a really soft spring tension. I have already tried to replace the springs, but I couldn't find any springs that would fit in here. So yeah, this is also the reason I'm not gonna keep this, because I don't like the feel of it. And I always think the 8020.5 is just has a couple of features that it doesn't need. The thing here in the back, I guess this is also the reason the Shark Cup exists in the end. But the Shark Cup to me also feels overpriced, and I cannot justify it, especially with all the many Spydercos that are in the size category and that cost a lot less. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend the 80-20.5. And if I was Demko knives, I would not make both the 80-20.5 and the Shark Cup and the Nano Shark and the Razor Shark. I think they have too many small knives, and I think they should get rid of some of them. That's just my honest opinion. And I really like what Andrew Demko has done for the knife community. And if you would make a list with the most iconic, best folding knives in American history, the 80-20 should be on it, in my opinion. This is such a good knife. But I would personally only like to see the 80-20, maybe even the 80-20 point slim, only with thumb studs and then a variety of blade shapes and handle shapes. I like the new handle shapes that they came out with recently. I like the new blade shapes. So I personally would like to see the shark's foot blade shape a lot more often in the bigger sizes, both in the slim and in the full thickness, and only with thumb studs. I probably will never buy another Demko knife without the thumb studs, because these thumb studs are just so good and they make the knife so much better than just a cutout. If you would ask me, the only two Demko knives that you ever need is the 80-20 full thickness and maybe the free rein. There could be an argument made for the armature, but apparently the armature is not available in most blade shapes anymore, or I guess in the spear point blade shape at least. And I would like to see the spear point blade shape come back, because I think that was really unique. Yeah, I would rather have Demko knives make less knives, but more variations. That would be cooler, especially since these handle scales are interchangeably. They could just release the scales or the blades, and then you would not have to buy another knife on its own, I guess. So that's it for this video. What do you think about the Demko knives long term, since they're on the market for a couple of years now? I think they're really good. They're here to stay. These designs should definitely not go away. Especially, like I said, the 80-20 is one of the best, most iconic American-made folding knives in history. So this probably should be around for as long as humans exist. But most of the other knives I personally don't need, and yeah, that's just my opinion. If you disagree, that's fine. Everybody has their own tastes and own needs, and everybody has a different life and needs knives for different things. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and maybe we see each other in another video. Goodbye.